Good morning, all of you. We will continue with the chapter Silk Road, Hornbill, page number 74, written by Nick Middleton. Okay, so Silk Road is an example of what type of writing?
Travelogue.
Okay, so it is a travelogue. Yes, class, what is a travelogue? Does anyone know? Yes, class, what is a travelogue?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, when one writes about his or her journey.
Okay, experience of a journey, right? The places visited during a journey and the experiences on a journey. Okay, all right. So yesterday we started the chapter and we saw that as the writer author, they headed towards Mount Kailash. So they saw a beautiful half moon in the sky, and the author, he also saw uh, clouds. They looked like French bread, and the clouds, looking like French bread, they glowed pink. They were glowing pink because of the sun rays, and the sun, they spread a slash of rays on the mountain tops. So the mountain tops, they also received a rose tinted blush, as well as the clouds also. The clouds, which look like French bread in shape, they also were glowing pink. Okay, so now they were leaving. So who gave the author that sheepskin coat? Do you remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Lamo.
Okay. So Lamo, she gave the author a farewell present, and because when she came to know that the author, he was going towards Mount Kailash to complete the Kora. Okay, what is a Kora?
A religious practice.
Okay.
Basically, Tibetan, they revolve around the mountain.
Uh-huh. So it is a type of pilgrimage around Mount Kailash. So, so when she got to know that the author, he was going towards Mount Kailash to complete his pilgrimage, so she thought that the author, he needed to have some warmer clothes. So she went into her tent and came back with a sheepskin coat, a long sleeved sheepskin coat, which all the Tibetan men wore. And so once in the car, they got off the Shatang, and so Seaton, I told you who Seaton was. Who was Seaton?
Ma'am, his guide.
His guide and driver. So he said that he knew a shortcut that would take them directly towards Mount Kailash. But this route of it, since it was a shortcut, so it involved crossing many fairly high mountain passes. But then he said that it won't be any problem if there is no snow. So when the author, he asked that, and what is the likelihood of getting to know that whether we will get snow there or not? So he said that obviously, sir, we will not get to know that till the time we get there. And so from Ravu, they go and they take a shortcut, and this shortcut took them across vast open plains. And these vast open plains, they had nothing except a few except a few in the vast open plains. What they saw first? Which animal did
And
they see first?
some
Yes.
gazelles.
All right, so they saw a few gazelle, and they were nibbling the arid pastures. All right, so arid, what is the meaning of arid?
Very dry.
Very dry. And so, when they saw a moving vehicle, they frowned, and then they bounded away, disappeared into the void or emptiness. And then, the plains, they became more stony and less grassy. So now they were moving, you could say, towards a wilderness. And so when they went there, they saw a great herd of wild ass came into view. And now Seaton, because of his experience, so he told the people in the car that we now a herd of wild ass is approaching them. And then he pointed towards a far off cloud of dust, and he said, Kiang, Kiang, wild Tibetan ass. So, and when they drew near, they saw that the herd, it was galloping en masse, means it was galloping together at the same time, and they were wheeling and turning in tight formation, as if they were practicing maneuvers. Means as the soldiers, when they march, so the way they march in proper manner, and that requires some skill and care. And so the herd, it was also galloping in the same way, as if they were maneuvering, they were moving in a manner which required skill on some predetermined course. This course was already determined, they already knew the course, and so they were running on it, just like soldiers when they are on a march. Plumes of dust billowed into the crisp, clean air. And because they were galloping so fast, so what they saw, that after this herd, it passed them, so plumes, means clouds of dust, they rose up into the crisp, clean air. All right, so till here we have already done yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's proceed further. So, as hills started to push up once more from the rocky wilderness, so from the rocky area, now they again came to the hilly side, and when they came to the hillside, they passed some solitary drogbas. Drogbas? Who are drogbas?
The shepherds.
Shepherds. Pastoralists, we can say. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Pastoralists are, also like nomads. Okay, first tell me who are nomads.
Ma'am, who move from one place the people who don't have a permanent settlement,
And
they move from one place to another in search of livelihood and earnings.
all right. And now pastoralists, now they are also like nomads. They move from one place to another with their herds of cattle, sheep, donkeys, elephants, camels, and all that. And so they move, according to the change in season that we have done in class 9th, if you remember. Pastoralists in the modern age, we have done that. You remember
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
Right.
Yes,
Okay. So they passed some solitary drogbas, and they were tending their flocks. And so these drogbas, sometimes they were men, sometimes they were women, and these figures were well wrapped. So they had wrapped themselves, well covered themselves with woolen cloths. Why? Because obviously they were in a very cold area, and so sometimes they would pause and stare at their car, and occasionally some of them also waved towards them. And whenever the track they took the author, whenever the track took their car close to the animals, so obviously what the sheep did, they took evasive action, veering away from the speeding vehicle. Evasive means to avoid. All right, avoid or escape, veering away, moving away, changing direction. So whenever the track it took the author close, or the car close to the animals, so the sheep, they used to escape, and they used to move away or change direction away from the speeding car. Now, so they passed nomads' dark tents pitched in splendid isolation. So when they, on the way, they saw the tents of the nomads, and they were pitched in splendid isolation. They were in isolation because, obviously, high mountain area, and so very cold. So very few people, very few pastoralists were there, and so very few were there, and so very few tents they saw, and they were all alone. The You could say the landscape, it was splendid, and in those landscape they saw some isolated dark tents. And then along with the tent, they usually saw a huge black dog. And what breed of dog? A Tibetan Mastiff. And so they also saw a Tibetan Mastiff standing guard outside the tents. Now, these beasts, Now, as soon as they were aware, they realized that any vehicle was approaching them. So, they used to cock, just turn, move their heads, all right, and then fix the moving vehicle in their sights. And as the coming car or it came into view or it came closer to them, then all of a sudden these mastiff, they used to explode, come into action, and they ran directly towards the approaching car. And the speed was such, just like a bullet which is shot from a gun. And the author says, and it was nearly as fast. So just like a bullet shot from a gun, it does not turn or stops for anything in the path. So just like that, these mastiffs, they ran towards the author's car like a bullet shot from a gun, and they were also obviously running very fast towards them. These shaggy monsters, now why they are called shaggy? Because of their long thick hair or fur. And they are said to be blacker than the darkest night. Means when we have no moon and the night is very dark, so they think that these monsters, these shaggy monsters, they are even blacker than the darkest night. And they usually wore red collars, and when they barked, it was so furious, and it showed their massive jaws and obviously very scary teeth. The author says that these mastiffs, they were completely fearless. Means they were not at all afraid or scared of a vehicle shooting straight into a path. And they just came running towards their car, straight in their path. And they were not stopping, they were not turning. And so Seaton, he had to brake and change direction abruptly. Swerve means to change direction abruptly. So Seaton, he has to brake and change direction. The dog would make a chase for 100 meters or so before easing off, having seen us off the property. And these dogs, what then they would do? They ran after the vehicle, for 100 meters or so, and then they calmed down, they eased off after they had seen the coming vehicle or the vehicle of their property, and then they used to calm down. And then the author says, it wasn't difficult to understand. Then he says that now I'm able to understand that why these ferocious Tibetan mastiffs, they became so popular in China's imperial courts as hunting dogs. That why they became so popular as hunting dogs, and how these Tibetan mastiffs, they came into China, obviously brought along the Silk Route in ancient times as a tribute from Tibet. So from Tibet they were taken to China through this Silk Road only. By now we could see snow-capped mountains gathering on the horizon. We entered a valley where the river was wide and mostly clogged with ice, brilliant white and glinting in the sunshine. The trail hugged its bank, twisted with the meanders as we gradually gained height and the valley sides closed in. And so the author, they moved on further from there, and he says that now we could see the snow-capped mountains far away on the horizon. What is horizon?
Ma'am, the line where the land and the sky seem to meet.
All right, so it is an imaginary line, obviously. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so imaginary line where it seems that the earth and the sky, they tend to meet. So very, that means very far away they could see the snow-capped mountains now. And then they entered a valley, and here the river, it was quite wide but mostly clogged with ice. Means river was wide, but they had a lot of ice was there in the river, and it was brilliant white and glinting in the sunshine. So the ice, it was a brilliant white, shiny white, and it was shining and glinting in the sunshine. The trail hugged its bank. Means the trail, it moved along the bank of the river Trail is the path, the established path, the path through which they were moving to go towards Mount Kailash. So the trail, it hugged its bank, means it moved just close, or it moved along with the bank of the river, twisting with the meanders as we gradually gained height and the valley sides closed in. What are meanders?
Ma'am, when a river adopts a curved path,
Hmm.
repeated curves.
All right. So regular curves in the course of a river, right? So the trail, it moved along the bank of the river, and the trail, the path also, it moved. It twisted along with the meanders, along with the curves in the course of the river, and then gradually they gained height and the valley sides they closed in. The turns became sharper and the ride bumpier. So now the turns, as obviously they have gained height, elevation, they have gained elevation. So the turns now they became sharper and the ride obviously it became more bumpier. Now till the time they were on the plains and then just not very high altitude, till that time it was okay. But now the ride became bumpier. Seaton now in third gear as we continue to climb. So the turns were sharper, ride became bumpier, and Seaton now he drove the car in third gear as they continued to climb on the trail. The track moved away from the icy river, laboring through steeper slopes that sported big rocks daubed with patches of bright orange lichen. So from there the track, it moved away. First the track was following the meanders of the river, and then the track, it moved away from the icy river, and now it moved through steeper slopes. And on the on the sides of these slopes there were big rocks, and on on these rocks they saw, the writer, he saw patches of bright orange lichen. What is lichen?
And it is basically a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi.
All right, so algae and fungus, and so they saw that they saw patches of this lichen on these big rocks that were on the side of the track. Beneath the rocks, hunks of snow clung on in the near permanent shade. And beneath the rocks, what did the author notice? That there were hunks of snow, means large pieces of snow. They were still clinging on to the near permanent shade. Near permanent means the rocks were there. So obviously the rocks were considered as permanent. So snow, it clung to these rocks. I felt the pressure building up in my ears, held my nose, snorted, and cleared them. So, now they were gaining height. So, the author, he felt that, pressure was building up in his ears. I hope all of you must have gone on the hills or the mountains, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you move through this spiraling curves and you're gaining height at the same time, so you feel that pressure in your ears, right? And so the author, he also felt that pressure in his ears, so he held his note and then he snorted, and then he cleared that pressure which was building in his ears. We struggled round another tight bend, and Seaton sobbed. And then struggled around another tight bend. There was another sharp bend, and so they struggled to take that bend. And Seaton, he stopped. He had opened his door and jumped out of his seat before I realized what was going on. And so Seaton, they struggled around a very difficult bend, and then he stopped. He opened his door and he came out of his seat, and before the author could realize that what was going on. So, snow, said Daniel as he too exited the vehicle, letting in a breath of cold air as he did so. And so, Daniel, who was his interpreter, he said, "Oh, snow." And he also, he also came out of the vehicle, and when he opened the door and he went out, so with the opening of the door, it brought a breath of cold air in. Okay, so have you understood what we have done today? Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so for today, we will stop here, and when we meet again, then we'll continue. All right, all of you?
Project